All right, well, thank you all for joining us today for this week's Lunchtime Chats with Tlingit Haida. This week we're here to talk about Get Out the Native Vote. And I'm really excited to have just a powerhouse panel today of amazing Indigenous women who have been experts and leaders in getting out the Native vote, working for years to inspire and motivate those to get off the fence. However you vote, get out there and share your voice and affect change by voting. Again, we've been hosting lunchtime chats every week, and it's been a very exciting way for us to connect with our tribal citizens. And so we have these special topics. This one's very exciting for me. So I'll go ahead and introduce our panel and turn it over to, or I guess I should introduce myself, sorry. Again, I'm Richard Peterson. My Tlingit name is Chakya Ish. I'm Kagwantan from the Eagle's Nest House, and I'm the president of Tlingit Haida. Turn over to Jackie. You want to introduce yourself, Jackie?
Sure. Kusinyo hatu asak sukahadi ayahat Kagwantan yari yeshitach. My Tlingit name's Kusine. I'm from the Ravens. I'm Raven clan from the Sakai House in Haines, and I am, as President Peterson said, I'm the second vice president for Tlingit Haida. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Jackie. Kendra?
Hi there, good afternoon. Thanks for having me on today. Kendra Kloster, Raven Kiksari. I'm originally from Wrangell and Juneau, although I'm living up here on Dena'ina lands in Anchorage. Currently the executive director of Native Peoples Action and Native Peoples Action Community Fund.
Great. And Liz?
Well, Harala is good people. Ninkwagad Gitkianan Sinudi Nan Kiagan. Ninkwagad Gitkianan was my grandmother, Mona Jackson. She was from Haida, Heidelberg, and then Keith Kwan, Cake, my community here. Ganahake Kennedy Chan Kiagan. Ganahake was my grandfather, Tommy Jackson Sr. Hathlungados, he was Tlingit, and his home village was Keith Kwan. Dalachini is my mother. She's a teacher and a weaver. My father is Bill Cheney, makes his home here in our village of Cake. Lagunai is my Chedkil name, my Haida name, and Katsas is my Tlingit name. I am Eagle, Hummingbird, Chichkitne on my Haida side, and Raven, Kachadi, freshwater Maksakai salmon on my Tlingit side. So Shawa for having me today.
Well, Shawa to all of you for joining us this week and to share your insights and your, I think, very powerful words to help motivate our people. We want to make sure that our folks really participate and make sure our voices are heard, that we're represented in all facets, from local, statewide, nationally. You know, I think it's easy to take for granted just how powerful our voices are when we collectively exercise our right to vote. So we'll go ahead and have this conversation. I want to remind those tuning in and watching us on Facebook Live that at the end of our conversation, we'll open up for questions, and we encourage you to ask your questions. If we run out of time, we'll make sure to still get your questions answered. And remind everybody to like the video feed, and you'll be entered in for door prizes. So I'll go ahead and get started and just point this question at all of you. From your personal perspective, why is it important that we make sure all Alaska Natives get out and vote? Anybody want to?
Sure.
Jackie?
Well, for me, it's just extremely important that if we expect our politicians to represent the issues we care about and deliver on promises kept to us as Alaska Natives, American Indians, that we choose the right candidates. And so if we don't step up to choose the candidates that are going to represent us and let them know and hear our voices, we can't expect to get a better outcome.
All right, thanks. Kendra or Liz, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, goodness, sheesh. For me, I think um, when I think about voting, I think about getting out on the land and on the water. I think about our ways of life and about what my grandfather Kanahake used to tell us. That no matter what, these are our lands. We are the ones responsible for caretaking them. It's on us, and we have to be the ones who are actively doing that. And that's what I think about voting. Voting is a way for us to protect our ways of life. If we care about hunting, fishing, gathering, harvesting, then we have to vote. The other thing that it helps us do is protect our children. And those are the two things that I think we as Native people all firmly believe in, doing what we can and exercising our responsibility to do our best by them as our children and our ways of life. So that to me is why voting is so important. It's just one way, one more tool. And it's one of the easiest tools too, It's like one of the easiest ones to do for each of us to actually do on our own. So finish Chisha up.
Thank you, Liz. Okay. Go ahead, Kendra.
Yeah, just add a little bit, but I agree with, what both of you said, and just really thinking about the impacts and the decisions that are being made by the people that we are electing. And I want to be sure that they're there to represent our values. And we know that Alaska Natives have such a powerful vote. And if we go out, we vote together. I mean, we're 17% of the voting population. You think if we all get out and vote, you have such an opportunity, all of us have such an opportunity to really change the way things could be. And so really understanding, harnessing that power. And some folks have said, my vote doesn't matter, but it really, really does. We've seen in Alaska and all over the country, but specifically in Alaska over and over, where one vote can decide an election, or we've seen elections that have been tied, where it's been won by a coin toss. So just really understanding the individuals that we are electing are making decisions on our behalf. So I want to ensure I do my research, I know who's on the ballot, and vote the way that I feel that they're going to represent me and my family, and absolutely thinking about the future of my children. I have 2 small children, and I want to be able to be sure that the Alaska that they have will be similar, or not better, to be able to hunt and to fish and be able to live the way that we want to live. So, appreciate it.
Yeah, a couple of things, that you all touched upon. I think it's certainly not lost on me that our very way of life right now is decided by people that are in elected positions. And I'm talking about as a Tlingit man, a way of life that's been passed down for, over 10,000 years, to be able to go out and gather and to harvest and to provide and to take care of my spiritual and my physical need by that is decided by people that are in elected office. I think that's something to really think about for our people, and why we shouldn't be sitting on the fence. I think we need to be informed and vote. Kendra, you touched just briefly on, the population. Maybe can you share some statistics that will help our viewers see just how powerful the Native vote can be?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Alaska Native people, we're 17% of the voting population, so approximately 25% Alaska Natives here in the state. And we've seen this in races before where we're able to really influence and tip balances of the vote. And some other statistics that we can even think about, across the nation. So American Indians, Alaska Natives, we make up 2% of the United States population. So it's about 6 million people. This is from the 2018 census population estimate. And knowing what we can do, not just in our state, but really across the entire United States, because we need to ensure that not only Alaska is, we're electing people that are going to protect our way of life, but this is also on the federal level. So we need to lock arms, across the nation to be sure that we are supporting each other, just to talk about our issues, work together, and get out the native vote. And this is something that's just near and dear to my heart. I actually just got off phone calls right before coming on here where we were talking about get out the native vote. And I was on the phone with people from South Dakota, North Dakota, Wisconsin, all over, and talking about the different issues together. But how can we support each other as Native people? Because we know that decisions on the federal level are just as important. And so making sure that we have people in office too that are going to represent our values across the nation. So it's just super important to make sure that we're getting out to vote and understanding that we really do have a power to make change in our state and across the nation.
That rolls right into Jackie. The power of the native vote has influenced votes in the past, and there are many examples of elections that have been won by a very small margin, as Kendra said earlier. Can you share some examples of when the native vote has really mattered?
Yes, we have said over and over again that, Native American vote really counts when we have a population base of 5% or even less of Native Americans in a particular area that can change the outcome of an election, especially when they vote in block. And so we make key differences in tight races where our margin can swing a vote. And a good example, of course, was John Tester, and we talk about that one, and Heidi Heidkamp, who won her election by a 1% margin. But at home, we all talk about Lisa Murkowski, and across the nation, the tribes do too, because the power of Lisa Murkowski's vote in 2010 was just incredible. That, over 100,000 write-in votes with a high percentage of them coming from our rural Native communities really made the difference. And she never forgets it. All the time she recognizes that that's important. But I want to talk about just the last elections too, recent elections, when we now have 4 Native American representatives in Congress. I mean, having Sharice David and Deb Haaland join Tom Cole and Mark Wayne Mullen has been just amazing for the legislation that they have put forward, supporting, as Liz said, the values that are important to us, our families, our culture, protections over our sacred sites. The list goes on and on. So it's not just getting people behind the non-Native candidates that, carry our values and our message. It's getting behind those Native candidates who can represent us in ways nobody else can. That's the power of the Native vote.
That one just hits me right to the core. I think when we see our own people in these positions, it tells us and it tells our young people that there's no limits on us. Any limits on us are by our own making, because they're not really there, and we can blame other people, but I don't buy into that myself. I think we have it in ourselves. We have greatness that have been passed down from our ancestors. It's in our DNA. And when I've seen like Deb Haaland and Ms. Davis, it's inspiring to me, and it makes me excited. And I want to see our young people excited and inspired and want to fill those seats someday too. I think how powerful would it be to look at our own congressmen in Alaska, our own senators, and see our own people and see them represent the great state of Alaska and carrying our message and all of Alaskans' messages forward. Liz, can you break down what the difference is between the primary, municipal, and then the rural education attendance area, and what general elections is for our viewers?
Yeah, sure. I think this is a really good area to clarify too, because there's so many different kinds of elections, and people often wonder, what's the point of one versus the other? And really they target both different areas in Alaska, like the REAAs are for those those rural education areas where you can weigh in on your children's educational needs, school funding, technology, all the things that have to do with making sure that our kids in our rural areas are able to access an equitable education. So that's why those REA elections are so critical. Our local and municipal governments, our city governments, you know, all politics are personal is one of the logos or anthems that you might hear. And when I think about that, I think about that on the ground level in our villages, where we have a couple different types of governments active in our community. One that we're all really familiar with is our tribal governments. Those are really incredible and important elections to participate in as Native people, to be part of your federally recognized tribe. But the other one that's in many of our cities across the state and our communities is the city or local government, where you can participate, you can run for office, you can represent your people. City councils and the mayors, they make decisions about what's actually happening on the ground and on the streets in your community, whether that's, you know, what kind of taxes they're going to be collecting, different kinds of projects to support infrastructure, roads, water, sewage in your community, whether they're going to allow things like marijuana sales in your community. These are really important local decisions that the people in the community should be driving, and you do that by participating in those local elections. We just passed the state of Alaska's primary election, and the primary election allows Alaskans to weigh in on political party candidates who are vying within their party to be the front runner for their party in the general election, which happens in November. In Alaska, we have a really unique situation where the Republican primary is a closed primary. So you have to be registered Republican or undeclared or nonpartisan to be able to access that ballot and cast your ballot for the candidates running in that primary election. The other ballot includes Democrats and independents and other party folks who align with that ballot. And it's an open primary, which means you don't have to be registered in those parties to be able to access that ballot. And here in Alaska, as you know, we have real challenges with absentee mail-in voting right now. Those are not going to be counted until, I believe, August 25th. So if you cast your ballot using the absentee process, your ballot actually hasn't been counted yet. I'm one of those people. And so the numbers are going to change. What you see now being reported are going to change after all the absentee ballots from around the state and around the world come in, because our military has been voting by mail forever as well. And so their ballots need to be counted. Once that's all sorted out from the primary election, we'll know which candidates are running for which seats when it hits the general election, which everyone is going to be participating in. This is the big year because it's a presidential race. That's historically when we see a larger number of voter turnout. We need our Native people to understand how important it is for you to cast your ballot. It doesn't matter who you're casting it for, but you need to cast it. You need to participate in this general election. It's a really big one. It determines our delegation in Alaska. It determines it's going to determine who your state reps and senators are here in the state of Alaska's government. So those are really critical elections to be a part of.
You know, I remember when I was a kid, my dad, I think he was jokingly saying he voted so he could complain. And I don't know why that always stuck with me. So I figured if you don't vote, you can't complain, right? We have to be a part of that process. Jackie, can you kind of share from your perspective why this year is an important election year in Alaska and for the United States?
Well, in Alaska, of course, we have 40 seats in the Alaska House of Representatives that are up. That's all the seats, and we have 10 seats in the Senate that's up for election. So that's when people say elections are local, we're really talking elections are really going to be important in Alaska. We have tough issues that we're dealing with. We're dealing with, the economy of Alaska, our tight budget, our, proposed energy development and other developments. There's just a lot of issues. It makes it really important that we engage. Our civic engagement is just so critical. And I would have to say, if this COVID pandemic hasn't opened our eyes to the importance of national politics, then we should be. And election this year, even though it may be difficult to show up to the polls or make sure that you signed up for your absentee ballot or whatever, will matter more than ever. How our country comes together to seek the solutions and overcome its economic challenges and its health challenges, and be prepared for future emergencies is going to be critical, that we have people with our values sitting in those seats. I can't say, just as you said, Richard, you can't complain if you don't vote. This is one time that it's more than complaining. Your life, your family's life depends upon you turning out to vote.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, Jackie. Kendra, how has Native People's Action supported the Get Out the Native Vote effort?
Yeah, thanks for that question. If you don't mind, I just wanted to add one quick thing on to Jackie's, where something to think about for our elected officials of the things that they make our decisions on. They are making decisions on budgets. They're making decisions on how much they're funding our education, where that's funding going. And they're also in charge of confirming people that are going to be on our boards and commissions. So you think about fish and game and all the different things that are happening. They're in charge of doing that. So there's so many different things that they're going to affect that really does have to do with our everyday life. And so I just wanted to quickly add that on. You think about roads, schools, our ferries, the people that we're electing are making those decisions. So while I hope everyone's contacting our legislators, telling them what we feel, but I just wanted to add that on there. But for the efforts that Native People's Action is doing, this is something that's just been such a passion of mine, of making sure that our voices are heard. Even before coming on with Native People's Action, is just making sure that we're being a good partner with our people, with our communities. So we're trying to provide tools to the best of our ability. We are revamping our websites to have a full election center. So you can go and find out who's going to be on your ballot, doing a pledge to vote, help do reminders, find out about the ballot initiative. So we're going to be having that up early September. We have information now, which you can go to just nativepeoplesaction.org or npacommunityfund.org. Both of our websites have lots of information, and we're going to be doing more. We reach out to the Division of Elections and we talk with them a lot as well. So when we're hearing back from the community members of where they may now have gotten their ballot, that's been some concerns. We try to help people through their process of you can look on Division Election website. We'll walk them through to see if your ballot's gotten in. If not, what are the next steps to take if you, just to make sure that your voice is heard. So we do our best to be a good partner. We're doing outreach with our communities, with our tribes, and just saying how can we be a good partner and providing information, awareness, and anything that people need. I feel like we're just trying to offer that support.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with some of the social media outreach that you folks have been doing. And then, of course, just the advocacy you do throughout the year, at the legislature. You guys have quickly grown into a really important venue and voice for us. So really appreciate it. Liz, I think you kind of touched on some of this, but you know, as we know, the Alaska primary election just ended. When will we know the results for the Alaska primary elections? And is there anything else we should know about that?
Yeah, like I mentioned a little bit ago, the results that people are kind of looking at now are not finalized until all the ballots have been counted. One of the things that I think is really critical, and I know this is probably a personal point of irritation for all Alaskans, is that sometimes it can feel as if your vote isn't important because people start calling elections before they even counted your ballot. But we have to remember that there's a process in place. And while the media might be out there saying one thing, the process has yet to take place. So, you know, don't feel as if your vote isn't important. It will be counted. The process has to be followed. And so that's where we are with the absentee ballots right now. They are going to be starting to count them on the 25th, and we'll hopefully be wrapped up with that by the 28th. So these races are all going to shift a little bit, hopefully, because they will hopefully shift because the absentee ballots pack a punch. They're important. In-person voting is important, but also absentee balloting and mailing them in or doing the early voting, whatever route you can take to cast your ballot that works for your life is important. And those absentee ballots represent the vote and choice of Alaskans, and they need to be counted, and they will be. And then we'll have a better result coming out of the primary, and people will know who they're going to be able to really think about for the general.
You know, one of the things that happens in elections isn't always just voting for a person, but there's ballot measures. Kendra, in Alaska, the general election will include 2 ballot measures. Can you provide an overview of these 2 ballot measures?
Yeah, so I'm just going to do kind of a brief overview and then send you the websites to do more research because they do get a little bit complicated. So first ballot measure 1. This is an act replacing the political party primary with an open primary system and a ranked choice voting for the general election. Plus it requires additional campaign finance disclosures. So if you, oh, sorry, this was ballot, sorry, I think I may have missed it. So ballot measure 1. So that's making sure I'm reading this right. So this one, so yeah, if you're looking at the ranked choice voting, so ballot measure 2, sorry. Ballot measure 2, ranked choice voting. This one will be, it's gonna just change the way our election system works a little bit. So right now, where we have the open primaries, and you're voting for, you know, your Republican Democrat who goes up next. Well, this one will change it where you're ranking like 1, 2, 3, 4 in the primary who will move to the general. But that ballot measure has a lot into it. It has a lot of like finance disclosure things as well. So definitely need to go through and go on Division of Elections website and read through all of that material. The next one, which is ballot measure 1, apologies for my little mix up there, but ballot measure 1, an act changing the oil and gas production tax for certain fields. So a yes vote supports making changes to these policies, requiring person entities that contribute. Oh, I see. See, I shouldn't be reading directly from the slide. So, okay. So with the ballot measure 1, so if you're voting yes. See, this is why I look things up first. I'm looking at your slides.
Yeah, I apologize, Kendra. I think our slides got mixed up. So the ballot measures, it says ballot measure 1 is actually 2 and vice versa.
I see it. Okay. So ballot measure 1, yes, so is the oil tax initiative. So an act changing the oil and gas production tax for certain fields. And so if you go to Division of Elections website, again, you're going to want to read through that. It gets a little bit complicating, but it's just in regarding the taxes on whether or not we want to change that. The oil and gas taxes have been changed kind of throughout the years, as if we've seen that through the legislature on how much taxes are going to Alaskans versus how much taxes are going to be paid through the oil and gas companies. And so this has been discussed a lot in the Alaska legislature. We've had ballot initiatives on this before. So just read through those. I just want to encourage everyone that these get a little bit complicated, and I won't get into which one and how to vote, but just making sure that you do some research. And apologies, I got a little mixed up here watching where things were going. And I know Laguna and I wanted to add on to that a little bit more.
Yeah. And this is one of those places that I think is really important for us to not feel intimidated by the kind of language or anything that's in the ballot measures. These are actually things that you probably already have opinions on or understanding of, but sometimes the legalese can trip people up. And so you get into the voting booth, or you look at your absentee mail-in ballot and you're like, don't be intimidated. These are things you probably already feel, know, and have experienced. So you can go, like Kendra said, to the website to get a little bit more background on them, or there's lots of, easy to Google and find what the proponents of these ballot initiatives are saying. Ultimately, you get to cast your vote how you feel. But again, this is one of the areas that we need Native people to not feel inhibited to really show up to the voting booth for. Just because these are on here, we need people to understand, because they're on here, this is another reason that you should be like racing to cast your ballot. So I just wanted to say that, because I know lots of people are always like, oh, those ballot initiatives, so confusing. Yeah, it's okay. We all experience that, but because of that, we need you to show up to vote.
Right. Okay. Liz, did you have a comment on another question too?
No, that was it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Again, apologies about getting those slides mixed up, but you're definitely pros. Way to roll with it. Jackie, what are some helpful questions that our tribal citizens should ask themselves as they determine how they cast their vote?
So I am really, I feel it's important that you actually really have this conversation with yourself before you get into the ballot box, and be an informed voter. I like to know not only, why is that candidate running? Sometimes people are running for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes they just want to have a single issue and they want to hear the public to hear about it. They're not really running to win, they're running to give a message. And you need to know that, because then you'll want to decide whether or not that your vote, you want to cast it that way or not. I like myself, I always say I is for Indian, but I don't really, personally, I look to the candidates, whether what party they represent doesn't matter to me as much as who they are and how they represent themselves and what their values are, that link to the things that I care about. I look to see what their Native American, Alaska Native policy pieces are. I look to see if they have made any campaign promises or campaign platform pieces that say about their values for Alaska Natives or American Indians. It's really important for me how they feel, how they speak about our tribal policies and our recognition, and do they care about the natural resources, our children, those things that are important to me. And that really helps me decide whether or not I want to vote for them. I also really pay attention to how they campaign. So it's not just what they say, but their actions when they say it and how they do that. I know politics gets negative, and I know it, comes down to these blasting advertisements about each other. But you can actually see through who has those strong ethical values that you want to represent you. And so, I would say, pay attention. I do this for all my elections. I don't care if it's a native corporation election, a tribal election, or a state and local government election. I'm not voting for my family. I'm not voting for my friends. I'm voting for the person who can represent my values with their voice.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I'm glad you pointed out tribal and corporation too. As a get out the native vote, we kind of neglect that. And, our tribes represent us. They're our government. They're can be so effective. And then it's so important who you put in there to represent you. Our corporations control our resources. We should care about how they're caring for that. And for me, I know I wrestle with this every time. I personally hate the party system. So I want to vote for the person that I also agree with you that best reflects my value system. And sometimes that's not a party thing, that's a personal thing. And so I think whatever your reasons are, make sure that you're voting for people that you believe in and that you believe they're going to represent your interests. So I think that was great, Jackie. Thank you. Kendra, looking ahead, what are some important dates that our tribal citizens need to know for the upcoming general election?
Yeah, so you'll see there on the screen a few dates. October 4th is a deadline you want to register to vote. I know we have automatic voter registration, but if you've moved, make sure you want to get your registration updated so you can have that reflected in the next general election. October 19th, absentee in-person early voting's going to be starting. And so usually you've got, 2 weeks before the election that you can be early voting. We say mask up, making sure we're staying safe. But you can also apply for an absentee ballot. You can do it online now. I know we have internet connectivity issues across the state, so you can also call the Division of Elections and they will send a ballot application. So you have to fill out an application in order to receive your absentee ballot by mail. And if there are any questions or if you need something, again, I feel like you could probably call any one of us and we'll help, get you a ballot. Just important that everyone is going to be out and voting. So November 3rd is our general election day. So polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. that day. Of course, double check. I know that there were some issues in the primary where some polling locations were closed. And so hopefully the bugs will be worked out and that won't happen again. But if there are questions, make sure to reach out to Division of Elections, reach out to organizations in your tribe to be sure that we can all get our voices heard. And I know that there are also municipal elections that are happening. So that's also really important. October 6th, Juneau has their municipal election on that day. So there's multiple different things going on. There's lots of different elections. So be sure to check out the websites, read about the candidates. And I also encourage to give people a call. I know usually you might see your candidates going door to door, and that's probably it's changing a lot. I don't know who's going to be doing door to door, but giving them a call if you don't know. I want to stress that I feel it's really important that you have all the information that you need so you can read. If you have questions, give them a call. They're there to represent you. And so just they're everyday folks like just you and me, and they're going to be representing us in there. So just make sure that you get all the information that you can.
President Peterson, I have a question of Kendra because it was asked of me and I don't know the answer. So if I signed up for my absentee ballot for the primary, will I automatically get my absentee ballot for the general?
It depends on how you registered for your absentee ballot. If you registered once and you checked that you want to receive it for the primary and the general, you'll get both. But if you didn't, then you'd have to reapply to get your absentee ballot again. And if you have questions, you want to check to see where your registration is, there are some tools online for division of elections. You can also check, there's a mechanism to check if your absentee ballot's actually been sent to you as well, so you can double check. And if you have any, questions, maybe you got your absentee ballot, you can't find it, you can call them and they can send you another one. Or if you go on election day, you decided you didn't want to vote by mail, you can still vote in person, and what they'd probably have you do is vote a question ballot. It means it'll still be counted, but they just like to make sure that people aren't counted twice for voting. So there are multiple different ways, but make sure to check Division of Elections website, or you're more than welcome to check our website and call us too if you'd like to do that. We're here to help. And if I don't know the answer, I will find it and get back.
Great, thank you.
So that kind of leads into, Jackie, who can request an absentee ballot?
Anyone. And that's what's really good, because before we used to think only people who get absentee ballots were the elderly who couldn't actually get out to vote, or those that, were sick or other kinds of things. Anybody can request an absentee ballot, and you don't have to have a reason anymore. You don't have to say I'm going to be traveling for work or anything like that. You can just request it. And so if you'll see here on the screen here, and as everybody said, just go online. You just have to fill out a few questions. They ask for your driver's license so that they can immediately validate it, and you hear right away that you've been accepted.
Great. So Kendra, why do you think voting absentee is so important right now?
Right now, I feel it's about keeping our community safe, making sure that you're feeling safe, and that, that's one of the primary purposes. I really think of my grandma right now who's in Wrangell, with cases of COVID. I've really encouraged, and I've helped her get online. This is how you get your ballot. And I just want to ensure that we're keeping our community safe. So that's the reason why I've gotten absentee ballots and done it from home, and have helped my family members do the same thing. But if a lot of people feel that they want to go in person too, I don't want to discourage that. I just think any way that you feel to make sure your voice is heard is going to be important. And I know that there's been, procedures in place. So if you want to vote early in person or on election day, I just encourage everyone to protect yourself, but protect your neighbors too. Protect our elders, and our kids. I definitely, I think about that. I hate having sick kids. So, mask up, and just ensure that you're figuring out a way to vote one way or the other. And if you have difficulty voting, or I just encourage you also to reach out. Again, reach out to your friends, your family, reach out to organizations. We've been doing the best we can, whether it's delivering absentee ballots, or absentee ballot applications, if that's needed. Think ahead as well. Making sure that you've got a stamp, because you do need a stamp to get your ballot back in the mail, and you also need a witness to sign that. So just really thinking ahead and making a plan to vote, I think, is also really important.
Yeah, for whatever reason, I applied for my absentee and didn't get it. So I went out and voted. And, I think it's important where you said, whenever you go out, wear protection. I was really happy to see they had processes in place. I felt really safe, actually. They were really taking every precaution. So yeah, always wear protection. Liz, there's been some concerns over the U.S. Postal Service's reliability for getting ballots delivered in a timely fashion. What advice can you give to tribal citizens to ensure their ballots are counted?
You know what? Here in Alaska, we have a really unique postal service delivery system. And our community members, we know how it works. And we have a lot of faith in our mail delivery system because we live by our mail system here in Alaska. I mean, we get our medicine, we get our bills, we get our checks, we get our goods, our shopping, our groceries, anything that the U.S. Postal Service will allow you to send, we send it. Tires. You know, we have U.S. bypass mail to help, you know, to help make sure the cost of some of our groceries out to our rural villages can at least kind of keep the cost down a little bit because it's so expensive. We rely on our U.S. postal system. And advocates have been working with Division of Elections to ensure that they understand that not everyone has, you know, the same kind of flight service in and out of their community on a daily basis. So we do have some delays. Those are things that we already know about, are part of our everyday life. That just means we have to order in advance. So order your ballot in advance. And they've made it possible. So those of us in rural Alaska, we will be actually sent our absentee mail-in ballots up to 45 days before the ballot deadlines. So they're already counting in that there's going to be a longer turnaround for some of our ballots to get to us and then also to return back to them. So don't let that hold you back. Just get your absentee application in if that's what you want to do. And they will get the ballot to you. And I just want to also shout out to our postmasters and the people who work in our post office across the state, because during this pandemic, they've seen their workload, I don't even know, quadruple. And so I just want to give them some love too for helping ensure that our civic rights are not infringed, and they're doing their best to support that.
Absolutely. Jackie, you know, we mentioned you're one of the vice presidents, Tlingit Haida, and I know you've been involved with our efforts. Can you share how Tlingit Haida is supporting the Get Out the Native Vote effort?
Sure. In fact, Tlingit Haida is a registered Native Vote coordinator with National Congress of American Indians in the larger National Native Get Out the Vote efforts. And one of the things that we're going to be doing is just what we're doing here. This was the beginning of our Native Vote series, and we'll be doing some lunchtime chats to get to know the candidates. So everything we talked about, what do you want to know about your candidates? It's a good time to ask questions. We'll be providing these forums for you to be able to engage with those candidates, hear them, and hear what they say about the things that matter to us. We also are going to be doing a lot of social media posts with all the Native organizations in Southeast, and we hope that you like them, share them, you know, and move them along. We're also hoping to get energized our younger generation and all of us, because we're all young at heart, on some campaigns about why voting matters to us, and developing some of our own messages that we can share via social media, and hopefully have some prizes. So, but there will be a virtual registration rally coming up, and you'll learn a lot about Native Vote and what we're doing if you just check out the social media sites of Central Council.
Great. Kendra, can you remind us again for the upcoming general elections, how can people request an absentee ballot?
Yep, you can go online, if you see on your screen there, to absenteeballotapplication.alaska.gov. You can do it online to request your absentee ballot. You can call the Division of Elections. As I mentioned, I know internet connectivity, but you can call them and they will mail you one. You can call me and I'll mail you one. Anything do to help. So you can do online, and you can download a paper application as well and be sending that in.
So this one is to all of you, but are there any upcoming election events that our viewers should know about? Anybody?
The radicalize the vote. I think is going to be, and I'm trying to think of what the date is for that. Kendra, you might know that.
August 29th.
Yeah.
And I would say too that, at First Alaskans, you can always count on us to help you do what you need to do in terms of getting out the vote. We can help steer you to different places. If there are voting concerns that you have, questions that you have about process, let us know too, because we're happy to connect you to Division of Elections or help address those issues. An upcoming event that we're currently in the process of planning is a conversation about issues that are important to Native people in this election. And so we'll be hosting a group of folks and we'll be live streaming it to Facebook. So watch out for the social media updates on that. We'll let you know when that's going to happen. But it's really about getting our people's issues on the table and making sure that anyone who's running for office understands that if they're going to look for the Native vote, then they need to really be aware of and paying attention to our issues and engaging in policy and making policy platforms that reflect us. And so that's the kind of discussion that we're going to engage in. Watch for the social media postings.
In some of the places, I think that you could actually go and look to hear more about what's happening across, Alaska and of course the country. Around Native vote is Indian Country Today, and Mark Trahant does a wonderful job of staying on top of the races, who's running, what they represent, and really also still really tracks a lot of data about our voter engagement and turnout, particularly even with the state legislatures, and the fact that when you look at some of the data, Native women are turning out to vote in greater numbers than our Native men, which means that we need to encourage more of our Native men. But also women across the country are turning out in larger numbers for running as candidates. And so you'll hear a lot about Native candidates on Indian Country Today. I said nativevote.org is another good place to get materials. You can actually download a Native Vote coordinator kits and resources. And print them out yourself. They will also be having some grant applications for some of the communities who might want to apply for a grant for doing some Native vote engagement in your own community. So a lot of good places for resources on this slide. So, our Central Council team, you can't thank them enough. They are always on top of it and they have all the information. These slides are perfect example of that.
Thanks for that, Jackie, because that kind of leads into a comment I wanted to make is, we have First Alaskans and Native Peoples Action. You have done an amazing job, and if we can help in any way, I think one of those is share your information with us so we can share it. The advocacy and the work you do is just unparalleled. Yeah, I'm always blown away about the different initiatives that you're all doing, the messaging that you put out, and I think we're always trying to, as our Native groups, talk about things like hope and resiliency, and your organizations do a phenomenal job in that. So I'm going to chi shawa for that. Liz?
Richard, I just want to share that back with you and Central Council holding this forum and the kind of engagement that you've been driving so that people are really centering Native issues and priorities. Your Native forums during the legislative session are just absolutely essential and critical, and people rely on them now to help them be informed, but also to bring the elected officials to our community. And I really appreciate that. I would also say that at some of these links here for voting resources, there's also different things that you can access through the link. So if you're a community organizer, if you're a community activist, if you're trying to get out the Native vote in your communities and you're looking for resources, connect up with these sources as well. Just a quick story about our little sailor boy here. We wanted to use this because of its connection to who we are as Native people. We all love our crackers, right? Our pilot bread. And all we did was we sent an email to the corporation and we said, hey, you know, we're your biggest customers. We know that. Can we use the logo and adjust it to fit our Get Out the Native Vote work? We're not going to be selling, you know, we're not using this to make money. This is all just Get Out the Native Vote work. And they said yes. You know, so it's just an easy thing to do. And those resources are available through the Alaska Native Vote. They should be available. So if you wanted to print posters and things like that, you can use them. So just to talk a little bit about how to access these things to use in your outreach in your communities too.
I think the Sailor Boy is a really great representative of why natives count, because I'm pretty positive if it wasn't for Alaska Natives, they would have went out of business years ago. I think we keep them in business. Kendra, did you have a comment?
Yeah, kind of took the words out of my mouth there, but I, agreeing with everyone that just said, is I just want to kind of stress the importance of the partnerships that we have, and I appreciate that. And so anything that, we can do to help push out information, provide information to anyone, and, we're going to do our best to, uplift the different events that are going on. There's different candidate forums, in different communities. So just if you see something that you feel like is good to share, I feel like you could send to any of our organizations. Those are things that we can share. There's lots of nonpartisan type of candidate forums that can just help inform on what people are doing. Those are some things that we at Native Peoples Action are looking at and are doing, and we'll be co-hosting with other organizations to just help get out information, just so you can get to know who's going to be on the ballot. And again, appreciate everybody's partnership, everything for what Tlingit Haida is doing and FAI. There's just so many good things happening, and it's just great to do it with all of you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's these partnerships, holding each other up is what brings success. So that concludes our conversation. I'm hoping you ladies can hang on just a little bit longer, and we'll open up to some questions from our viewers. Kind of funny to say viewers. I feel like a talk show host now. Sam, do we have questions?
We do. Thank you, everyone. That was very informative. Our first question comes from Diane McKinley. She says, Guanachish for the information. I want to vote absentee for general election, and I was just wondering if I could still request the absentee.
Yes, you can.
All right. Our second question is actually from Diane again. Do you have information regarding a 17-year-old soon to be 18 this year, and if they can vote in the general election?
Not until they turn 18.
But
So on their 18th, if they turn 18 one day and they have pre-registered in the high schools, they allow them to pre-register so that they become immediately registered on their 18th birthday. And if they've done that, then they can vote 3 days after their birthday. But if they haven't, then you need to do the registration. So encourage them to pre-register if you're 17.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also I wanted to add to that really quickly too. Not only are the ones that are 17 about to turn 18 able to pre-register and then cast their ballot as long as they're 18 on election day. The other thing is that if they're not old enough to vote yet, the Division of Elections has created a way for young people to get involved in the civic process, and so they can actually help with voting in the upcoming election. They just have to reach out to DOE to do that, and it's a great place for them to get more comfortable with what this whole voting thing is about.
Great, I didn't know that.
That's actually the only questions I have today.
Great. Well, I noticed in the comment period, portion, a lot of people weren't asking questions, but they were saying why they vote. And I think that's really awesome. And I encourage people to go through those comments and read them. I think we all need to be motivated, and we all need to take that and go to the ballot, go to the mailbox, do what you can. I want to share this week's door prize winners are Mary Russell and Martin Stepeton. You both won David Boxley Formline t-shirts. Please message us your contact information so we can get those mailed out to you ASAP. Again, I just want to thank our panelists. You know, when we do this each week, we try to, one, if we're sharing on our programs, it's a little easier. We go right to our manager and the folks involved. But when we're doing these special topics, we really want to get people who are experts. And I think you all proved beyond a doubt that you're experts in this area. That, and boy, did your passion on the topic of voting come out. And I just want to thank you for that passion. We need more of that. We need to motivate more people to vote. We really can move the needle in the directions we want when we vote. And so we'll just continue to encourage that. Apathy is our enemy. Get off the fence, vote. We're not telling you how to vote. We're not telling you who to vote for, just vote. Again, everybody, thank you so much. I want to say GOTNV Hawa to our sponsors, Sacred Grounds, Smokehouse Catering, Sacred Shine, and the Elizabeth Peradovich Hall. And we'll see you all next week. And we're going to be talking about our Native Lands and Resources Department. And we do a lot of great work there, and we're happy to share that. And, you know, and again, in times of COVID, we just wish you all to be well and be safe. You know, our kiddos are going back to school, and it's a new era for them and how they're doing that. Let's hold our kiddos up, and let's encourage them and support them and just be there for them, because this is going to be a challenging time for them and us, but we want to encourage them. Everybody be well. GOTNV Hawa.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, rock stars.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Chish, thank you.